So imagine earning less than the minimum wage. People do. It's called a 0-hour contract. In short, you're called upon to work whenever you're required, and if you're not required, you don't get paid. Anna Burns-Francis with what that's like.
This is Michelle on shift today at McDonald's in Panmure. This week, she'll work a total of 37.5 hours. That's a good week.
So I'm on 15.05 at the moment.
Per hour?
Per hour.
It's hard to make ends meet on that, isn't it?
Yeah, sure is.
Michelle is on a 0 hours contract. What that means is that she's got a job and she's got an employment contract. But what good is the paper it's written on if it doesn't actually guarantee her any hours?
Just really not knowing if you have work the following week and how you're going to pay your bills and stuff like that. Yeah, that was the main issue for us.
So last year, Michelle and her colleagues protested.
This company is terrible when it comes to giving workers their fair increases.
So the lowest would have probably been like 15 hours a week, and the highest would have been probably around between 26 and 28 hours.
That's a huge variation, isn't it?
Yeah.
How did you cope with that?
Hard. It was really hard. Yeah. Having a family and trying to bring up kids, pay your rent. Yeah, trying to survive.
Michelle's now found herself getting more regular hours, but she has 5 kids and rent to pay. What did you do in a 15-hour week?
Well, just sucked it up really, and just had to live on what we had.
At any time, she could be dropped back to 0 hours. There's no guarantee of work. Here's a copy of her employment agreement. It clearly states the maximum number of hours she'll work, but makes no guarantee about the minimum. McDonald's isn't the only company doing this. In its agreement, Burger King clearly states there's no guarantee of either hours or shifts per week. Carl's Jr. will give you a minimum 3 hours work per shift, but there's no guarantee of even 1 shift a week. Wendy's, KFC, even Hoyts and Event Cinemas, they're all the same, employing 0-hour contracts. Why are these companies hiring if their existing staff want and need more hours? The union representing Michelle, Tour and thousands of other workers is on a constant campaign to end 0-hour contracts.
I'm a maintenance worker and I'm in a 0 hours contract. Last week, I did 0 hours.
That's right, 0 hours. None. And yet Mohammed is employed by Burger King.
I used to do 38 hours a week. 38 to 50 hours, I used to do it. So now I just do roughly 20, not even 20 probably. Saturdays, Sundays, I do only 2 hours each day.
So why the sudden drop-off in shifts?
They said we need to save hours. We're blowing out too much hours.
The problem for Mohammed is that if he's asked to work for just a couple of hours, he has to do it. A 0 hours contract is not a casual contract. If you're asked to turn up for a shift, you have to turn up for a shift.
These are big, wealthy, expanding companies that employ tens of thousands of workers. I don't think New Zealand society wants to see those people used and abused in that way.
Mohammed reckons if he doesn't get more hours soon, he'll be forced to look for a new job. But until he gets one, he'll have to borrow money off his parents to make ends meet.
You have to pay for gas, rent, food. Yeah, you have to look after yourself. You can't survive on $200 or $300 of money a week.
And if you can't pay the bills, there's no backstop.
No, I can't pay my rent. Now I can't feed my family. Now I can't feed my child. It gets down to that level, and some of them are truly tragic. And sometimes we're able to fix it, but often we are not.
Burger King, the Restaurant Brands Group and McDonald's are all going into negotiation for their collective agreements this week. They wouldn't be interviewed for this story, but the power is with them. They can end 0 hour contracts if they want to. They're employed, but they're not guaranteed any work. It's a 0 hours contract. And for the second week in a row, Mohammed's been given 0 hours work at Burger King.
It's rubbish. Only $14.25 per hour. You can't survive on it. Nobody would like to work just for like 2 hours.
So what does the Workplace Relations Minister Michael Woodhouse think of a 0 hours contract?
Of course, we can legislate for all the rules, but we can't legislate for good employer practice. And actually, I think this is bad for the organisation as well. It must take an enormous amount of time, effort and cost.
Mr Woodhouse is promising changes to employment law this year, but will that include scrapping 0 hours?
I'm quite happy to introduce legislation into the House in the middle of the year that would prohibit the worst excesses of the practices that we'll find.
So the Ministry of Labour is set to review 0 hour contracts. What does the Prime Minister think of them? John Selwood asked him.
Is that review an acknowledgement that there is a skewing, if you like, in favour of the employer or a disadvantage to the employee?
Well, I think it's a recognition that we have seen some signs of practices that we believe are not the intention of flexibility in the workforce, and B, fair on those particular employees. So at the end of the day, we want to make sure there's flexibility there, but we certainly don't want to allow a situation where employees are ripped off or exploited, and that's a risk with 0 hour contracts.
Unite Union has been protesting these agreements as well as trying to negotiate a better deal for its members. And tonight we can reveal they've been successful. Restaurant brands KFC, Carl's Jr., Pizza Hut and Starbucks has agreed to put an end to 0 hour contracts. It's the news these workers have been waiting for.
It's a great idea. It's security for not only myself but other colleagues that I work with, and it should be happening everywhere else.
Te Kahu Gates Tawa has worked at this Carl's Jr. since it opened in 2013. She's been on a 0 hours contract the whole time. It's not easy.
So when we first opened, we were allowed to pretty much work as many hours as we wanted, but then that slowly started decreasing and pretty much dropped down to 15 hours max that I've had in a week.
In a statement, Restaurant Brands says it's always tried to provide security to staff hours, and the deal is a sign of its valued relationship with the union.
Having, a reasonable amount of hours to do, just enough to be able to get by the following week.
It's the small print that will make a big change.
Anyone who tries to say we don't deserve that is welcome to come and do a day of my job.
Now it's time for the other fast food chains to step up to the plate.
Restaurant brands are the fast food restaurants that are getting rid of 0 hours, working with the Unite Union. This is good stuff. Antares Restaurant Group, which runs Burger King, says it's currently renegotiating their existing collective agreement in good faith. We will report back to you on what happens there. We begin tonight with some good news, and it's all about 0 hours. Tonight we can exclusively reveal another big fast food company is taking a stand against these contracts.
This is how Burger King worker Paige Gracie feels about being employed on a 0 hours contract.
How are you meant to be able to pay for anything with no guaranteed hours? I could go from 1 week like 35, 40 hours down through to like 20, 26 hours, and it's like, well, how am I meant to pay my rent and things like that?
The Unite Union's been pushing hard to end these overly restrictive contracts, and last week, progress. Restaurant brands, that's Carl's Jr., Pizza Hut, Starbucks and KFC, committed to end 0 hours. And tonight we can exclusively reveal that the Burger King chain has joined them. So this is the end of 0 hours at Burger King?
Absolutely, it is. We've still got a few issues to negotiate with them, but this is why we're stopping strike action tomorrow, because on the big issue on this one, we have an agreement and there will be no more 0 hours contracts at Burger King.
No more 0 hour contracts at BK. Better deal than you were thinking?
Better deal possibly than we thought we could achieve in a few months, in a few weeks. Absolutely, we're just ecstatic. And it really is down to the public support and the support of people who've just basically said these are unacceptable.
That means workers like Paige will be guaranteed minimum weekly hours that they can rely on.
Even if it's not a huge amount of hours, even if they gather up over time, you get to, you prove yourself that you want the more hours and things like that. Even if it's like that, then that's better, because eventually you can do that.
This is not the end for the 0 hours fight.
The workers' rights are under attack!
Unite Union's been pushing these fast food chains for years to give up these contracts. McDonald's and Wendy's are yet to agree. The change by Restaurant Brands and Burger King is a massive step in the right direction.
As McDonald's and the Unite Union continue their negotiations around ending 0 hour contracts beneath the golden arches, we thought we'd go there. McDonald's, if you're watching, this is what your customers, lovely people by the way, think of 0 hours contracts. So this is the McDonald's Grey Lynn. It's very busy. I have to confess I've been here myself a couple of times, and we're going to ask their customers what they think of 0 hours contracts. So how are you, young man?
How are you?
Yeah, good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir.
We're asking people what they think of 0 hours contracts.
Oh, well, I reckon they deserve to have guaranteed hours.
0 hours contracts. What do you reckon about them?
Bullshit. Criminal.
Why?
Because if you're going to hire someone, you've got to give them some work. Otherwise, don't hire them,
I think they're absolutely disgusting. They're offensive and they shouldn't be there.
Go to McDonald's this Friday. That's the call from a union after the fast food company walked out of pay negotiations. It's the latest hurdle for campaigners who are aiming to scrap the use of so-called 0 hour contracts, where workers are left without reliable regular shifts. Joining us this morning is the National Director of Unite Union, Mike Treen, who's been leading the negotiations until they suddenly stalled yesterday. It seemed, though, Mike, like they were progressing well. What happened?
Well, the company did come back with an offer that was halfway there. Mm-hmm. They talked about guaranteed hours for hours worked, which is important because it was a shift from their previous position about rostered hours, which we can't monitor or enforce or so on. So hours worked was important, but they had nothing, they couldn't respond or ask about the secure and regular shift system. So there's always been two elements to the claim. One is a sort of a guarantee of hours, but then is a security of the shift. So you know what you're going to be working from week to week. But McDonald's just had no opinion or didn't appear to have any thought given to this subject. And then when we queried it, said we needed more, they got a huff. It was as if they were expecting us to suddenly sort of roll over and say, tickle our belly, just because they've made address one part of the issue. And it's not good enough. That's not bargaining. I think we could have reached an agreement yesterday.
And given that Restaurant Brands could come to the party, does it sort of baffle you that McDonald's walked out and said we can't even go there?
Well, they've been playing a game with this negotiation, in my view. That we've had twice as many days negotiating with them as with the other companies. They're the last to the table in terms of a meaningful offer. And they've refused to pay a pay increase for union members, while giving pay increases to non-union staff to undermine the union. I think they're trying
effectively punishing union staff,
yes.
And that was in fact one of the other issues, isn't it? The fact that you can't advertise on notice boards to join a union, and that can't be made public.
Yes, this is the 21st century, and people should have a clear choice to join the union and the collective agreement when they join a company, or join the individual employment agreement. And McDonald's doesn't allow that, and they won't allow us to put notices on the notice board without them censoring it beforehand. Well, this is nuts, and I think they need to grow up and start treating the union and workers who are members of the union with respect.
So what's the next step, Mike? Obviously, you both, yesterday's negotiations went nowhere, so you're looking towards Friday as a boycott.
Yes. We're a minority. We accept that fact. We're a minority in this company. 80% of the stores are owned by franchisees, and they treat someone joining the union like it's a personal betrayal. So it's very difficult for people to join the union, for people
take action, and because of the 0 hours regime, if they take action, they can have their hours cut. So that's a sort of a double whammy. So we're asking the public to say, well, we're not going to go and shop at this store. There's plenty of others who are doing deals. Burger King's doing a deal with us on this issue. Restaurant Brands have done a deal. Carl's Jr. is there. They can, you can go there. Just give Macca's a miss on May 1st, because it's actually International Workers' Day as well. So show a bit of solidarity for these very young and often young and vulnerable workers.
So a symbolic day to have it.
Yes.
The fact that you did make so much traction and progress and found a solution with Restaurant Brands, does that give you any hope that perhaps you can get there with McDonald's as well?
We will get there with McDonald's. We told them at the beginning of the, in fact, we told them 2 years ago that this was going to be the critical issue for this year's negotiation. We will get there this year. They will. The people of New Zealand will make them deal with us, I think, in a responsible way.
Yeah, well, we're certainly on side, Mike, so thanks for coming on to talk to us this morning. Best of luck for the next time you're around the table.
There'll be no more protest action from McDonald's workers after the company decided to scrap its controversial 0-hour contracts. The fast food chain followed the likes of Burger King and Restaurant Brands in making the move, which will come into effect in July. Unite Union National Director Mike Treen says workers couldn't have done it without help from the public.
New Zealand society spoke really. You know, we don't have a lot of muscle with these companies, to be honest, and you know, workers are in a vulnerable position because of the 0 hours regime. So there's limits to what the pressure we can put on directly.
Mike Treen says a planned protest in downtown Auckland this afternoon will now become a celebration.